continue. All right. All right, we're starting this recording. Thanks for joining me. Okay, we've started with a little rectangle that's 25 feet by 12 feet. So, and we got that by drawing a line 25 feet over, 12 feet down, 25 feet over, and 12 feet back up. Okay, and there's our new one. I'll just take the old one away. Bye-bye. All right. So what I'd like to do now is divide this into quadrants, okay? And today is going to be an example, not necessarily based on a house, but based more on some grid systems and just a little different format that you can use CAD in. You're not always going to be drawing a house, right? So I don't want to always get you in the mindset that that's the only thing that we can draw here. Okay, so I'm going to draw a line to divide these two from midpoint to midpoint. I'm also going to draw a line to divide these two. Now, you guys probably all have a bunch of layers that we built from last week. I'm just going to go ahead and just change this 0 layer to pink so you can see it a little bit better. Does that help? For some reason, oh, I think my thing's on a gray background. Let's go here. Here's another thing for all of you. If you go up here to the AutoCAD, the little A MEP symbol, and come down to options. Right now, my screen looks really gray to me. Because I'm sure the profile was set up differently at one point, and this is a brand new version of AutoCAD for me. So I haven't even got in and set up anything. I just got it at like 3:50 this afternoon. So I haven't gone in and set up or changed any of the display settings. So let's go in here real quick. Display. So I'm using color theme for dark, which is fine. Okay. But there's also, I'll have to find where it is. User preferences. We can see inches, line weight, pocket. There should be a. This one's dark. You know what? I wonder if this has. I don't know if it has it. This used to have 3 options here. It used to be dark, light, and black. And you could have it all black. It looks like this 2024 is a little different. That's fine. I just want to make sure you guys can see my screen. So discard changes. So can everyone see the pink just fine? Or would another color be better? It just seems hard for me to see it. We got a yellow. It just seems really dim. I don't know why, but. That work? Does everyone like that? Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about text and text sizes. And we're going to start by labeling these quadrants. Okay. So let's come up here. We talked a little bit about text last week. We can make 2 different types of text. We can make a multi-line text or a single line text. I always like using a multi-line text because when you hit enter, you now have another line underneath you and you can continue to stack text. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just put, let's say, the top left and then the bottom right of that quadrant. And I'm telling it that's where I want my text to live, in that area. Now it's saying, what would you like to put on your text, right? You can just start typing. But before we do that, I want to look at the size. Because 1/2 inch is super, super tiny, unless you're dealing with something that's only 4 inches big, right? Size of text is all annotated. So which means a 1/2 inch may work for something that is 4 inches, but a 1/2 inch isn't going to work for something that is 25 inches, right? You might have just a little tiny guy. Now, when we talk about text, we can also talk about what it looks like on the paper space versus model space, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But right now, in order for us to get this to fill this space, we need to really make this bigger. And instead of going ½ inch, I'm going to type in like 6 inches. And remember, this thing's 25 feet by 12 feet, right? So if that's 6 inches tall, I should be able to fit 24 lines all the way down, right? Does that make sense? Because the ½ inch is actual size. Okay, and then we'll talk about other types of text in a little bit. But when we're in our model space, it is actual size text. So I'm just going to type in, and again, I like to use caps for everything. So quad 1. And I don't like Roman or standard. I want to use, let's go up and we're just going to choose the most common font in the world if they have it. Oh, and we don't even have it. Lovely. So then we're going to just choose Arial. So you should have an Arial. There's just an Arial. Yeah, let's just use straight up Arial. Okay. And this is a text font that you will see on almost all drawings. Okay. Arial is used a lot. Helvetica is used sometimes. Okay. But Arial is typically the text of choice when it comes to drawings, I should say. So when we place that in the very, very top corner, right? When we chose what quadrant we wanted, it placed that, and it's going to start the text to the very left side of that and the very top side of that, right? So if you wanted to move this around after you placed it, we could either just use our move command and grab and move that text. Right? Or you could just use this little quick guy and you can just grab this little blue corner and move the text that way. So we just want to bring it in a little bit. Actually, we'll probably just take this whole thing, and I don't want it to be that long, so you can take the column width and bring it in. And then I'm just going to move this to roughly the center top, somewhere in there. All right. So the next piece of text I'm going to build, when I click text, on text, and I tell it where I want it, which is this is going to be quad 2, top and the bottom, it is going to start back over every single time. Okay, it's going to start with Romans and it's going to start with ½ inch because I haven't told it anything else and I haven't saved that style yet. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to save this style. So the nice thing is right off the bat, we've already got, it remembers that, hey, you've used a 6 inch before. So I'm going to give you that as an option, right? This one, I'm going to make it 4 inches tall. So I can type in 4 inches. Or just, 4 inches in there. 4 inches. And I can change it from Romans back to Arial. And I think if you just press A, you should get yourself back up there. I'm going to type in quad 2 and go ahead and let go. And you can see that now is a 4 inch, right? It's a little bit different, right? It's 4 inches, so it's a little smaller, and I'm going to move that back to center. So
Hey, Graham, for some
Yeah.
reason, every time I select the text and I tell it 6 inches, and it just won't, it just keeps going back to 1/2 inch. Oh, actually, maybe I need to speak out loud while I do it, and then I can.
I get that all the time.
It
So
seems like it worked that time.
Right. So one thing that you'll notice, and this is what we told it to do because we didn't rename it, we didn't change anything. But if I look at this, I changed this to Arial and 6 inch, right? You'll see over here the text height says 6 inches, right? The style still says Roman, okay? And that's because when I was on that Roman style, I made the change. I didn't make a new style. Okay, so we're going to go back to the M text edit. And you used to be able to click. I right click this, show, let's see. This child change. No. Where is my button? They move things. Yep, that's good. There used to be and there's not even a drop down under style anymore. A right click, you could right click and then create new style. Text editor. Character set. Because we set it Arial, we should be able to right click and save the style just like we did for the dimension set. I'm not totally sure why this isn't here. Very peculiar. It wouldn't make sense that you couldn't save a new style. But that appears like what is going on in 2024. All right, well, no worries on that. That's unfortunate, but there's always ways to work around this. So let's say that you accidentally made this one a 4-inch
Wait,
one.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
I think you can press like the Roman, and then it says manage text styles below it. And when you click on it,
that's what I'm looking for. Let's
go to annotate tab on the top, and then press Roman.
Here it is. Thank you. Good
manage,
call.
yeah.
Okay, so I was trying to do it. Thank you very much, Anna. So I was trying to do it in the edit M text, and this is the text editor that comes up. Okay, and I can change everything here. Here's other, fonts, but that doesn't change any styles, right? If we go to the annotate tab, so if we get out of that and go to annotate, now we can go in here and create a new style. So I want to come here and we're going to create a new Arial 6-inch style. Thank you very much, Anna. Good catch.
So not text editor.
No, we need to get out of the text. We need to go back into the annotate tab. Oh, yep, okay. They change every year. They change little things and where you can edit them, and it always used to be in the text editor. So, but it makes sense because you can do the same thing right here for dimension styles. So this is definitely an improvement on their end. I just didn't know where it was. So let's go ahead and we're going to click this Romans drop down and click manage text styles. And what I want to do is come over here to the right-hand side and click new. And I'm going to call this construction 241 6-inch Arial. Oh, you can't type in inches, so we're just going to type in, we're going to actually spell out the word 6-inch Arial because it doesn't like characters like that. All right. So now that I've made this style, I can now assign what I want. So I'm going to go to Arial, make it Arial. I'm going to make the text height 6 inches. And as soon as I click that apply button, that's like a save button, right? So that's going to apply any factors that you put on here, whether it is upside down, backwards. If I wanted to put that, we're not going to keep that on. Okay, our text is just going to be normal direction. But we now have this style. So when I hit close, now I go to home and go to text, or I could still be in this annotate and go to multi-line text. It's the same thing. This is the same command. It's just located in 2 different spots in your ribbon. One in the annotate tab, multi-line text, the other in the home, again, multi-line text. This is quote unquote the annotate tab in here. So these are kind of like drop downs that also have access in other ribbons. So they've kind of double dipped in their recent versions. So it looks like a lot of stuff we're going to start seeing in 2 places, which that's fine. Is more ways to get to it is better. So, but anyhow, if you see this big A here, or you see this A here, it's the same thing. Okay. So we're going to create this multi-line text. And this time, since I built that style, it automatically wants to put it as the last style that was created. So when I select this top corner and this bottom right, and I type in quad 3, it's already choosing that 6-inch text, the right style, and so forth. So what do we need to do to quad 1 to make it match quad 3? Right now, if I click on the text in quad 3, we come up here, we see this construction 241 6-inch aerial, right? Both of these have text that are 6 inches. Both of them have aerial text. But when I click on this one, it says Roman up here, right? Because all we did is edit that. We just modified that style. We didn't create a new style like we did for quad 3. So a couple different things you can do. We could just quickly change that from this style right here to construction 241. And we can do the same thing with this one, right? Super easy. Oh.
Oh, shoot.
Why is that so big now? It should be half in. What did that do? It's all out of order. I'm just going to delete it and copy this one over. And now I'm going to make this one the wrong type. All right. So the other thing we can do in your home, you can use this match properties. So if you wanted this one, again, we had this quad 1, we made it with a different style, right? We can see right there, it's the construction style now, but it used to be this Roman, right? If I use this match properties and click the first one and then click the second one, it should make the second one the same as the first. Okay. So you can use your match properties all over the place to match anything. If you want to match another piece of text with a different piece of text, select the text you want to match first, then what you want to match. So definitely a cool tool. And then last but not least, let's go ahead and just copy this one over. And I'll just copy from this base point to here. And I'll rename both of these ones from quad 1, quad 2. Again, if you have an issue trying to double click into this, you can always click on it and come to the left-hand side and change the contents in the properties by clicking into contents and then clicking this this arrow button, and that will activate that text box for you. So if you have issues trying to double click into it, sometimes it's easy, sometimes it doesn't want to do it. Okay. You can always come into here, contents, pop out, and then it's going to open up the text editor for you. All right. So let's go ahead and build a couple more different text types so we can do it. Get some practice in. So let's go to this annotate tab. Again, this also is available here. If you go to this annotate, if you click this drop down at the bottom of the annotate tab in the home, you can also get a drop down for manage text styles, manage dimension styles, manage multi-line leaders, and manage tables. Okay, so that's a nice place to remember on the home, but it's also here under the annotate, and it will be in each one of these. You can see it either in the drop down or up here. You can manage your dimension styles. Okay, again, they're double dipping, they're putting the same menus everywhere. They just want you to be able to access it all over the place. So let's go ahead and click this. We're going to manage text styles, and we're going to make a new one. And I'm going to call this construction 241. Let's go 4-inch aerial. And when I click a new, since I had the other construction 241 selected before, it's going to create a new one with the same properties as the one I had already created. Okay, same thing. If I click standard and then created a new one, it's going to build a brand new one off that standard. Okay, so it's just ultimately duplicating this, and then you can edit it. But that's why it's already got a 6-inch text type, and Arial is the font, is because when I clicked new, it was already on this one. So then that way it inherited all those properties. So I want to come in here. This one obviously is not named 6 inches, so I want to match it. It's named 4 inches, so I'm going to match it 4-inch text type. Apply, close. And now we're going to take all of these texts. So again, you can grab them all one by one by clicking on them each. You can grab on the top left, hold, or click once, and then drag to the right bottom and click again. If you start on the top left and try to drag, so a click and hold, you get this thing. It's not very useful. I would just recommend just clicking once, dragging, and clicking again. If you hold it, like I said, it draws exactly where you want where the mouse is, but it's hard to control what you're actually selecting. Okay, so I'm going to grab these, and I'm going to use a copy command. So we're going to copy this, and we're going to copy it down 1 foot. So we should have 2 of each one of them. Now in one move, right? So I'm going to select all of these bottom ones. Okay. So, but in one move, what we're going to do is change that all to construction 241 4-inch aerial. Okay. So you can edit multiple texts at once. Okay. Let's do this one more time and copy these guys once again, just to beat a dead horse. Copy, set my displacement. This time, instead of it being a foot, I'm just going to make it, let's call it 8 inches on this one. I'm doing it double the text size. So we moved the first one 6 for a foot. The next one's 4 inches. So we're going to move it 8 inches, right? Just kind of keep spacing. And these ones, I'm going to go ahead again, select them. come up here. And now you don't always have to have that style pre-built either. I can have these selected, come into manage text styles. They're still selected here. I can create a new, call this one construction 241. And I should probably, let's call this construction 241 2-inch aerial. And I'm going to change the height to 2 inches and click apply. Now, one thing I noticed here, and you should all have this, right? Since you're following along with me, is I named everything construction 241, right? Just so I separated from whatever AutoCAD ones wanted to be in there. Well, in theory, that's great. Okay. And I can take this 241. That's 2 inches, close. Oh, why did that not change? Let's change it to 2. That's fine. But you'll see right here, when I'm using the actual drop down, it's really hard for me to tell what I'm doing because they're all start with construction 241. So let's change that. Okay, let's go back into our manage text styles. And if we right click on one of these, a rename comes up. And let's just call this 2-inch aerial. And so on and so forth. Right. So we're going to change 2-inch that to 2-inch aerial. This we're going to rename to 4-inch aerial. And this one I'm going to rename to 6-inch aerial. Now all of those have a drop down that when I click on it, I can actually read what's going on. So maybe something might be good in theory to begin with, but you might want to change it halfway down the path. And that's fine. That's what AutoCAD and Revit and all of these design programs are all about, right? We want you to be able to have that ability to change things as you go. There's no such thing as a perfect set of construction drawings, right? Everything's got an error somewhere. You just got to find it. We're always running into things, having to do something different, change of plans, right? And our drawings need to be just as adaptive as we are, right? So that means AutoCAD is built and Revit on that front, but AutoCAD is where it started and was built all around being easily able to make and manipulate the drawing, right? So don't feel like you're forced to use anything just because you called it that originally or you used it this way once, right? You can use it any way you want. All right. So let's go ahead and we're going to end with text. I think we're good on, everyone good on text? Does anyone need one more? You want to make a 1-inch aerial? All right. So we're good on text right now, but let's go ahead and see how this plays. So I want everyone to go to their ArcD sheet. I don't know if you have one. It looks something like this. Cool. So what I want to do real quick in this ArcD sheet, and again, because I don't care about building our own title blocks, we can just utilize this. So I want to add a viewport to this. And I think we've made a viewport before. But I want to make a viewport in this paper space. And what that's going to do is a viewport accesses and allows us to see model space. Okay. So if I click one active model configuration, that's fine. I just want a single. I'm going to click this single one right here. It's going to be 2D, 2D, 2D. That's fine. And then it's going to tell me where do I want my top corner. And I'm just going to click like there. And where do I want my bottom corner? Somewhere down here. And when I do that, it now brings a window to see the other work. Okay, so I can see now that drawing that we already did. But if we just zoom in and zoom out on it, what it's doing effectively is zooming in and out on the sheet. Okay. So what I want to do is double click into it, and you'll see that this border gets activated. And you can now take this, and I'm going to actually double click out of it real quick. So double click in this gray area to get out of it, double click in the center white area to get into your viewport. Okay. You can also type in P space or PS, and that will bring you into paper space. You can type in MS or M space, and that will activate model space. Okay. We're only going to be dealing with one viewport, so that'll work fine for our needs. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in so that most of the title block is showing. And I'm going to show you a trick that I really like that allows me to actually get this the size that I want. Because right now, I've got some gapping up here and I've got some gapping down here, right? This could be bigger. But when I zoom in one more notch, I can't see the whole thing, right? So let's go ahead and use our command zoom. And I want to type in or just click this extents button. And that will actually take the extents of that title block and make it all the way to the edge. Now, again, I could do this with zoom. And I also like window. So window is probably my favorite zoom command. And you can click this window and then draw a window around what you want, and then it will zoom it exactly to that size. Okay, so if you're having trouble getting that title block to look bigger, utilize your zoom command when you're in paper space. Let's go into model space. So let's either double click or type in MS on your keyboard for model space. And now when we use our middle mouse wheel and hold it down, we can move this around. We can zoom in and out. We can actually use the same zoom command that we just used and use the window one. I don't want to get it right up against it, so I'm going to give it a little bit of a border, but we could make, that the border of the viewport. And it will zoom into there. Did you make it? You didn't make your viewport. Okay, are there other people? Do we need to step back and make the viewport again? Okay, so I'm going to click my viewport, delete, bye-bye. All right, so let's make a viewport. We're going to step back. So when you start on if you just click this plus button and it creates a new layout, it might have a title block associated to it. It probably is already going to build this is what it's going to build by default, which is just this little piece of paper, no title block, and put a viewport on it. I don't really like this. I don't want to have to put a title block on it later. I am just going to close out of it and just delete it. But I'm going to go back and utilize this ArcD. Do you have this ArcD title block? Good. Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to type in viewport in my command line. And it will bring up my viewports menu. So I want to make a single viewport. Click OK. And then I'm going to kind of click in the top left area, come down here, click in the bottom right. You still want to give a little bit of space. You don't want anything all touching that line, right? A title block is a border around it. You don't want anything touching that border, okay? Always leave, realistically, paper space about a 1/2 inch paper space away from your active viewport. Okay, so but once I click this bottom right corner, it's going to build that viewport. And by default, it just went ahead and zoomed in on this because it said, hey, this is all I'm seeing. I'm just going to zoom in for zoom extent. So that's what it did. And that's fine. Do I like that? No, I think that's a little tight. So I'm going to double click into it. Maybe double click on my paper space first so I can click zoom and set kind of what I want for the window. And then when I activate my viewport, now it's centered in my screen. I can do the same thing with my zoom command. and give this a little bit of a border. But now I've got some quadrants that are visible, right? They're as big as they can be without interfering with anything else. All right. So, and let's go ahead and type in PS or paper space and get back out. So earlier we talked about text and we talked about the size of it. And this 6-inch text is 6 inches tall in perspective to these lines, right? This line is 25 feet. This line's 12 feet. We could fit 12 of these stacked, and that makes sense, right? How big is this sheet? So this is the difference between model space and paper space. This model space is 25 feet wide. 25 by 12 is our model space. Our paper space, an arc D, is 24 by 36 inches. So it's 2 feet by 3 feet. Okay, so we're talking, you know, a scale of like 10 times difference right now. And that's just for this example. It could be 100 times. It could be 1,000 times, depending on what you're showing on that sheet. So if I use the same text that I used in here at 6 inches, what do you think might happen? Here's my text.
It'll be really big.
It'll be really big, right? So here's my text. I'm going to make it 6 inches. I'm going to tell it I want to start here. Sure. I just made single line, but let's go ahead and type in. And this says it's half inch. Let's see. It still says 6 inch area. So I'll just type in test. So, well, that makes sense. That's about 6 inches tall, right? That's a lot taller than it was in our model space, right? So there's a difference between annotating in paper space and model space. In paper space, the text size is whatever you tell it it's going to be, is what it's going to come out at, right? So if I tell it 6 inches, it's going to give me 6-inch text, which is huge. Okay. The text size that I use daily is 3/32 of an inch. And that's typical text on almost any set of drawings. What that does at 3/32 of an inch, sorry, 3/16 of an inch is standard. We use 3/32 because we can go to iPads now. But on 3/16 of an inch, which is about a 1/4 inch, you know, just a little bit under a 1/4 inch, right? That's about what you want to see. It looks fine. But if I try to type in 3/16 inch text and this whole thing is 25 feet across, right, in model space, you're never going to see that. Okay, so depending on where you're annotating, that text is completely different in size. Does that make sense? We got any questions on that? And I can write quad, let's just do this quad 1, for example. I could go ahead and let's just use this little 2-inch text. Why is that? 2-inch text. I told you. I'm going to go ahead and set my text box to something like that. Sure. Quad 1. There, that's actual 2-inch text. There we go. 6-inch would have been way bigger. So you can see it's huge, right? So what we probably want to use is we probably want to create some text that is actual for paper space versus model space. Okay. So instead of this being a 2-inch text, we're going to make this 3/32 now, or 3/16. Now, one thing you'll notice, if I click into model space and I move this model space around, this text doesn't move. This text, you got to think about this as an actual piece of paper. When you're in paper space, you're drawing on that top surface. When you're in model space, you're in a model in a zoomable category, right? So this text, you can move it around, absolutely, but you have to be in paper space to do so, right? So where you annotate is very, how should I put this? It's very important. So if I wanted to annotate this thing and I tried to put all my text on the outside on the paper space, and Jimbo comes along and opens up that drawing and is in model space over here and is like, you know, this doesn't look right. I'm going to move this to there. That matches the background better. That's where it needs to be. Okay, thanks, Jimbo. Thanks for fixing my mistake. Oh, shit. I come back to my paper. Now my annotations that I had here aren't matching where things are, right? So if you annotate in model space, it will stay with your wall, with your door, with your whatever. It's going to stay there because they're linked together in model space. If you're in paper space, you're just on the outside, and wherever that model space lands, that's where it lands. So if you've got a leader in paper space trying to point to model space and something moves, something grows, something changes, and you don't change how that text is or how that leader is, it's not going to match up anymore, right? So I like to do all my work, all my actual text that can be seen inside that viewport, all in model space, okay? The annotative text on the outside, I like to use for a legend, maybe for something in the title block, maybe for a note or something at the bottom, okay? That I want that to be in the top right corner always, okay? And that's when I'd utilize some smaller text. Oops, sorry. I clicked the cable. Does everyone still got a screen? Okay. So it's very important that you realize where you're making those annotations. Okay, so I'm going to delete this giant quad one, go back to my paper space, select it. Oh, and again, sometimes if you click out and it doesn't seem like it's working, you can always type in PS or MS. And if you're in paper space, it says, hey, guess what? You're already in paper space. Cool. I just wanted to confirm, right? Before you make a big change and, or do something, because you could draw all that in model space and not even realize it, right? Maybe you thought you were in paper space and it was all in model space, and then you move model space around and all your shit went away, right? So you got to be cognizant of where you're placing that. Okay, so I'm going to delete that one, and we're going to come up here, manage text styles, and we're going to build one more. And I'm going to call this one sorry, I didn't want to accidentally change the 2-inch aerial. You want to make sure that you click this new before you do anything in this height or whatnot, because that's going to change the previous one. So new, I'm going to name this 3/16. And I done my inch, so inch aerial. Oh, thanks. It doesn't like that either. So you can just type in 3/16 is fine. And we're gonna come over to height, and you're gonna type in 3/16 inches, hit OK, and it should just keep it in that format for you. Okay, it shouldn't try to convert it to a decimal. And away we go. So now that I'm in paper space and I'm utilizing 3/16 text, multi-line text, I'm going to come over to my title block, put in some text here, and my firm name and address, I'll type in Thompson Construction, and my address is 123 Pine Place Boulevard. Somewhere USA. But you'll see that 3/16 looks really big, right? Like I can see that from back here, right? So it's 3/16 on the paper. this is 3/16 in the model. So if I came and went into my model space and did the same text, and I'll just start it, you know, right here at the bottom, that's fine. And I type in the same thing, Thompson construction, 123 Pine Place Boulevard, somewhere USA. And I click off it. Can you see it? Can you see it? Can you see it? You have to really zoom into that thing to see it, right? Okay. So it's a major difference if you're in model space versus paper space and what the text size is going to really need to be. Okay. So the model space text size, I think you need to just kind of, depending on the scale of your project, you know, and how big, you need to kind of determine how, if I've got something that's 200 feet long, right? This is only 25 feet long, right? So if I took this thing and moved this, by the way, you can work inside your model space in your paper space. So like, as long as you activate the model space viewport, you can work in there. It'll just show it in white instead of black, like the model space does. But if yes.
So everything we do here translate to the first tab on model as we're in the model space?
Yes. If you're inside the model space, yes. Okay. So I just moved that 170 feet, 5 feet over. Okay. So if I click back into my model space, that line that is now 175 feet. It's a parallel, right? So, but if you're on the outside in paper space, that won't be reflected in model space. So if you annotated here, and I did the same type of thing, and I copied this, and I just placed it here, it looks like it's on models. It looks like it, right? It's in the viewport, or quote unquote, it's within the constraints or the boundaries of the viewport, but it's still living on the outside in paper space. So that won't be reflected in here on model space. Does that make sense? Oh, okay. Does anybody have a question, paper versus model? I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I'd want to make sure you understand because it's drastic, right? All right. So real quick, I just moved this 175 feet over, which is going to make this line here when I edit it 200 feet, right? So now at 200 feet, and let's just do the same thing with these. Let's drag these over just for sake of. Now at 200 feet, maybe my project looks something like that. Let's activate my paper space so I can see my whole title block and activate my viewport, and then maybe make that thing, you know, so you can see that. Well, now if I want to annotate inside model space at this point, I'm going to need to build some big ass text. Okay. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to manage text styles. I'll probably start with this 6-inch Arial and click new off of it. And it will, you know, get me Arial in 6 inches. It doesn't matter what you start with, to be honest. Most important thing is to click new before you start making any changes to the font size or the font name. So I'm going to call this one, I'm going to call this one 5 foot. So I'm going to call this 60-inch Arial. All right, so this is 10 times the size of our last one. Okay, and here I'm just going to type in 60 inches. It probably will convert it to 5 feet, which is great. Close it. And now, when I build this multi-line text, this is the entire site plot. Can you read this? Right? So that's how big something's going to need to be in text size if you want to put it in model space. Now we could put in like a 2-inch text size or a 1/2-inch text size in paper space and have the same effect, but when you move this model space around, it will not go with it. Okay, so if you are 150% sure that you are dialed on your model space, that's exactly where you're going to be, go for it. Annotate on the outside. I don't care. But if anything's going to change, you better move that model, you better move that text with it or figure out a way to realign it, right? But if you want to keep it together, keep it in the model space. All right, 5-minute break, and we're going to go over dimensions and looking at some other stuff. So meet back at 7:10. So that, that's fine. I have a, so I have a, bigger. Same text size, it would just stack, right? So, but that's why I like multi-line text, because if that didn't work, I could stack it, or I can pull it back up. Right? But single line is also, it's so restricted. All right, we'll give it another minute or so, and what do we got in the chat? We're recording. All right, is everybody back? We're all here in lab, so. All right, I got a few thumbs up. Cool, right on. All right, so the next part of tonight is going to be kind of the same. Again, I just want to drill this, get this in your head, and make sure you understand where to make these changes. So that way, when it comes time to actually putting dimensions on your drawing, putting the text on, you can do all of it without much struggle, right? if we go through this, enough times, I figure it should be easier. We did run into a little issue last fall where people were trying to annotate, trying to put dimensions on things, and I don't think we'd spent enough time covering it. And I definitely could have used another day on annotation. So I'm trying to make sure that we get it in. All right, let's go back to model space real quick. So we're going to talk about dimensioning. Now, dimensioning always happens in model space. Okay, you don't want to dimension in your actual, your paper space, because what's the dimension going to be relative to the paper space? Exactly. It's 1-to-1, right? It's 12 inches. You're not going to show something that's a foot wide at a foot wide on a piece of paper. Like, what's the point? Like, we don't model one. I mean, it's great, cool. It's like it can fit 1-to-1. Maybe you're doing parts and pieces that are 6 inches in size, right? And maybe that you would use a 1-to-1 type ratio, right? But either way, you can't dimension to something in model space via paper space. So if I tried to dimension, well, I guess you can, because I'm in PS, right? Already in paper space. You can dimension here, but here's the issue. Okay, same thing that we were talking about before. It's dumb. It's not really dimensioning anything. Yes, it might actually be reading the right scale of, the dimension for that. But if you move anything, it's not going to do it. Okay. So we want to dimension everything in our actual model space. Moral of the story, dimension, text, everything in model space. You want to make it the size you need for visibility. The outside stuff is just title block crap. I'm not making any big legends or big stuff that we need to place on here. That would actually, we'd want to put it in the paper space, right? Okay, so let's go back to model space so we can read this. You guys can take this away, and I'm gonna move this line 175 feet back. Oh, well, 175 feet. There we go. Just because we don't need it as big. I was just showing that for an example. And I'm just going to bring this down and bring us back to the little 25 by 12 grid that we had. All right. So let's talk about dimensioning. Now, dimensioning is very similar in the fact that we need to build a style that we can utilize over and over. Otherwise, we're just going to be using this whatever standard style, which is fine. Can you read that? I mean, you got to zoom way in there to read that, right? So that's not really going to work. Like tests, the quickest thing is if you can look at a drawing. My rule is if you can look at a drawing, you should be able to know everything is going on within 30 seconds. At least get the concept. If there's anything that you're struggling to see, that drawing is got some updates that it could have, right? This would be completely unacceptable in a drawing, right? It's too small. You can't, I have to get out a microscope. Like if that was printed, that wouldn't even show up. That's the problem. Like if you're printed, that's not even a squiggle. Okay. So let's go ahead and change that, right? Maybe this would be great. This is 3/16, right? So this is the text size that on the outside here looked really good, right? It looked fine. And that was the text that we used down here, right? 3/16 is a very standard text size in drawings, but 3/16 non-annotative, like it's way too small. You'll never see 3/16. So we need to bump it up. So again, let's go ahead and come up here and click the standard button and come down and click this manage dimension styles. Okay, so we're going to get this in our annotate tab. Okay, you'll also get that. I think if I'm in home and I click this, yeah, I need to move over to my annotate tab, but then I can get it right there into this manage dimensions styles. And it's pretty similar to the last one, right? You've got a little different options here, but what we want to start with is just this new option. And it says this actually allows you, it tells you and gives you options of what to copy instead of it just being the last thing you had. I'm going to call this one, let's call this 6-inch dim height. And of course, I always put in characters that aren't supported. 6-inch dim height. And then a whole other dimension style menu shows up. And basically all we care about here, the only thing that we care about is under this text category. So we're going to care, I guess we'll care about a couple things. But right here, this text, okay, we want to come down here and change this 3/16. What do we call this? 6-inch. So we want to change that 3/16 to 6-inch text. Now that works, okay? And I'm going to click OK and show you how that looks. We're going to close it. And I'm going to now change this one from standard. I want to change that one to 6-inch dim height. And you can see nicely, okay, cool. It looks nice and big, but I'm not happy with that. Okay, it reads a lot of things I don't want it to read. It has some really, really, really tiny arrows over here that you can't see. So we need to continue to modify this a little bit. The nice thing is if you go here and go into manage dimension styles, when we click on this 6-inch, we can go straight into this modified tab. And that will bring up this dimensions text style menu, which has a few different tabs across the top for different lines, symbols, text, fit, the units that we want, okay? So we're not done yet. So I do like having closed filled first and second. And what that means, closed filled versus closed blank. Can I zoom in my whole screen? How do I do that? Can I? Where's my Snippy? Whatever. Everyone can see that, right? I was just trying to get this a little bigger, but you can see it. You've got opens, you've got right angle, which that comes out at a 45 on each side. This open probably comes off at 20 on each side. Just different styles of symbol heads, of arrowheads. Okay, so I do want to leave it at closed filled. I think that's the best. I'm going to go ahead, since we've got a 3/16 arrow size and it came from a 3/16 text, let's go ahead and use the same logic and make this a 6-inch arrow size. Okay, I like to keep them the same. If you use one, use the other, and then it keeps everything kind of looking uniform. So are we done yet? I could click OK and close, and now you see these nice big arrows, but they're not too big, right? They're not overwhelming because of how big of a space we're dimensioning, right? That makes sense to have an arrow that big. Would it make sense to have an arrow that big if my drawing was only 5 inches across? No, right? So it's all dependent on how big your drawing is. Okay, so this is great for the text size, the arrow size, and what the arrowhead is, but there's still some more work to be done. So again, I'm going to click into this, click this drop down, go to manage dim styles. I'm going to modify that style, and we're going to go back into here and go and look at the primary units. So I really hate decimal inches. There's no reason for them in construction. Like it just tape measures don't read that way, right? They read in a 16th of an inch or an eighth of an inch. The precision that we need, we're not manufacturing something with a thousandth of an inch tolerance, right? I'm not building pistons. I'm not building something that goes inside of a cylinder that has to have this perfect tolerance. You know, we want architectural. 16th of an inch is all I want to do. Technically, in my field, typically we go like eighth. I dimensioned to 16th, but like eighth is pretty much, if it's within an eighth inch, that's construction tolerance, right? Eighth inches. And realistically, our like the robot head and everything that I tell, hey, take this, location, put it on the deck. The tolerance there is as big as your Sharpie, right? You got an eighth inch in your Sharpie tip. Okay. So depending on what you're marking with, that's just as much error as anything. Okay. So we want to take this. Let's actually go to eighth inch. I like eighth inch. We don't need anything above that. Fraction format, horizontal. You could also make it diagonal, which is weird. We're just going to keep it horizontal. You could also keep it not stacked, which makes it everything go to the outside. Again, the horizontal keeps things stacked inside your dimension arrows. Just keeps it looking good. And then last but not least, I want to go back to the text and change, and we can actually utilize, like right now, we just said text height 6 inches, but that gave us a text using the standard text, right? Let's go ahead here and just choose our 6-inch Arial. That height is now going to be grayed out because you chose a text style that already tells you what the height is. So now that text is going to match the text that we utilize down here. Okay. So when I click OK and close, I now read a beautiful 12.6, right? I've got arrowheads that are, showing big enough for me to see what things are pointing to. Okay. And I made this a 6-inch dim height, right? All right. So let's go ahead. And let's go ahead and build another one. Let's build a 4-inch real quick. Okay, so I'm going to come off of here and click this drop down again. We're going to go back into manage dimension styles. The one thing that's nice about this too is it's reflective of what that text and style is in the preview. So you can kind of get an idea of what you're choosing before you choose it. Maybe you've got 100 styles in there. A lot of them look really similar, but there's one you want to use that stands out or whatever, right? It's easy to see. You can also click this, drag down, and you could see, like if I had 100 styles, I could see all 100 styles. So that's pretty nice too. Okay. All right. So we're going to go to manage dim styles. I'm going to take this one and I'm just going to click new. And I'm going to create a copy of that one. Why not? Right. And I don't want to name it copy of. I just want to rename that 4-inch. And I wanted to start with that, use 6-inch dim height as a template. So I'm going to go ahead and click continue. And real quick, instead of having 6-inch Arial, we did the hard work already by building a 4-inch and a 2-inch. Let's utilize that. So let's go ahead and utilize the 4-inch Arial. That takes care of my text size, my font, right? Takes care of both of those with one click. We're going to go symbols and arrows. Okay. Pretty easy. Let's just take that and we'll bump it down to 4 inches because I like to match the arrow size to the text size. Primary units. We don't have to do anything with it. Okay. From here on out, if you copy any other one, you probably never have to touch this primary units again. Because everything should be architectural and precision should be 1/8 of an inch. Okay. And angular dimensions would be decimal degrees. Yeah, you don't want anything else. Decimal degrees and zero, precision is 0. So that means it's going to give you a whole angle number, right? So 47, this would give me 47.2. This one will give me 47.27. This would give me 47.274, right? So again, we're not getting that precise. So if there is an angle that we're measuring, maybe there's a reason you guys would use an angle. I've seen it a couple times now for some rounded walls and some radius stuff. But that's already set up for you. Okay. All right. And we'll go ahead and click close. And now this is set to my current one now. So I can click this dimension and create a dimension from here to here, bring it up to the same height. And if you've got another dimension already set, you can snap to that other arrowhead to get those dimensions to align with each other. And now we got a nice, smaller one. And maybe this is more size appropriate for this 25-foot one. Maybe this is a little big and overkill, right? It all depends on what you want to see. Okay. I don't care as long as I can read it. That's it. And we're not having to deal with your messy handwriting, right? So I should be able to read it. I'm a lefty. I know all about messy handwriting. We'll put it this way. When I went to college, my first class in construction, we had construction 101, and then we had our first AutoCAD class. And we didn't even we used AutoCAD a bit in that class. 99% of that AutoCAD class was learning how to block print and learning how to draft as a human manual drafter, not just this. I don't expect you to have that type of, knowledge and penmanship, and you're not putting anything on paper. It's just text. So make it big enough for me to read. That's all I'm saying. I just don't want to see that 3/16 of an inch text and me having to zoom into, the nth degree just to be able to read what you're saying, right? So it should match appropriately. And question, can you read it? Yes, no. If it's yes, and does it look good? Answers both those questions, yes, you're good to go. Can you read it? No, make it bigger. Does it look good? Because this one looks a little too big. It's great for our example, but we're going to do a 2-inch over here, and we'll see. Maybe that one looks even better. Maybe it doesn't, right? So it's all about trying to find the right size for the project you're using and how big of a space you're trying to dimension. All right, so we're going to do one more. Manage dim styles. I'm going to just start again with this 4-inch. We'll click new. It's going to create a copy of that 4-inch. I'm going to change it to a 2-inch dim height. Continue. And now I just need to change my text. And again, we already built the text style. Let's go ahead and use it. 2-inch Arial. Okay. And then symbols and arrows. I like to have my arrow size match my text size. Now, one thing I didn't cover, because I don't think it's super important for you guys, but we can do it on this one, and we can go back and modify the others. Let's take a look at the center marks and the size of that. So if I change this from 3/32 to 2-inch, I don't think it's going to do anything here. Let's do what I want to change is the jog height factor. Let's see. Mention. Yeah, because that's all. So they don't have, let's see if we can find the ticks. That's what I was looking for. Let's go to, and again, the beautiful thing is I can just manage dim styles and modify it and create whatever I want. So symbols and arrows, maybe we have, I guess we don't have tick marks in here. Another thing that they've removed in 2024. Does anyone know what a tick mark is? Yeah, so it's the diagonal line that you're gonna see. It looks like they. Huh? Yeah, but that's for the actual. We can do that. You're right. We can change it to a tick. So, you don't have both? That's dumb. So when I'm used to dimensioning here, I'll pull up something real quick in Revit and I'll show you what I'm talking about. But if I dimension something here and I'll dimension it and then bring it up. So this is what I was talking about. And I guess it's just the ticks. So we can try this. So the architectural tick, if you did this on both sides, it changes that to an actual tick mark. Now there is some that I've seen that, and I think you were able to do this before, but I'm not seeing it. But you have your, and I guess typically when you have this, you wouldn't typically see an arrow, right? But sometimes these are gone, and that's what we're dealing with. And so then instead of having a line underneath it, we've got a line that's got a closed arrowhead on each side. So again, it's just a different style of dimensioning. I don't care what you use, okay? And I don't know if you guys can see that there on the board, but not hearing anything, sorry. What? Well, hopefully you are. All right, so anyhow, you can use tick marks if you want to. You can use arrows if you want to. Okay, and the combination, I was thinking there's a combination, but looking back at this, no, it just looks a little different. This is what it looks like in Revit. That's what I'm used to seeing typically, stuff like that. So you'll just have a clean little tick mark. This is 3/32 of an inch aerial. Okay, so it's a little different in this because the text is all depending on its actual text size. There's none in Revit. There's none of this 6-inch text anymore. They got away with it, which I'm really glad they did. But unfortunately, we need to know it. So anyhow, we built one more. Again, this one I changed arrows to ticks. I don't care which way you go. And again, all of those changes could also be made over here in your properties. You could come here and change that to a closed filled if you want to. I don't know. I don't believe it does. Let's see if that change made it here. So I made a change in the properties. I'm going to check here and see if that actually made and saved the change in the dim style. And it looks like it didn't. So when you change something just in these properties, that's just going to change it for that like that one example. If I want to change it globally, it needs to be changed in the dim styles. Okay, so that's why we built everything there. We changed it. We'll change this back to, but since I already overrode this, it's like, you already made a change. We're going to keep this one. So now it's like, what do you do? Just come back here and change it back to closed filled. And then now it will behave as normal. Okay. So it is an option to change it here, but it's probably not the best option. Are we good on dimension sizes? Is there anything else that you guys want to know about dimension sizes, arrowhead sizes, creating actual dimension sets, or sorry, dimension styles? I think it's pretty straightforward. It's just knowing where to do it and what buttons to press, right? All right. So let's go ahead. I know that how many of you guys still have that other drawing up? Here, I'm going to come over and look at it real quick. All All right. So last week we had our drawing with our blocks and our windows. What I'd like you to do, if you have that drawing, I'd like you to utilize it, and I would like you to utilize a new dimension style for those dimensions, okay? I want you to utilize a new text style, okay, and take that whole thing and just, modify it. Let's go ahead and use like let's use your 4-inch text and your 4-inch dimension, okay? And so go ahead and you can do that. You can do that probably in one step, to be honest, by clicking it and doing this. If you right click a dimension and you come down here and you click select similar, you should be able to select all the dimensions in your project, and then come up here and let's choose the 4-inch dim height. And that's going to change all of them to 4 inches. So, and again, if you don't have the new one, or sorry, if you don't have last week's and you're just working off this new quad, that's fine too. Just go ahead and we're going to change these ones. So we'll change everything to 4-inch here. And then I'm going to select all, use this right click. Select it, then you can right click, select similar. Now, when you click select similar, it's going to select all text. Okay, it's going to select all multi-line text. It's not going to differentiate between the 2-inch, the 4-inch, or the 6-inch. Okay, if I wanted to just select the 6-inch, it's probably easiest just to click the 4 locations and then come up here and change that style to the 4-inch. Okay. Same thing with your dimensions. You can grab them all, or you can grab them one by one. Okay. So ultimately, we're just looking to make sure you've got a good base knowledge of how to modify the text, how to modify the dimensions, right? And not just, not just the height of the text, but the arrows, let's see what else we can do in here. Let's go ahead and go to your dim styles, and we're going to go to the 4-inch one, and I'm going to click the modify, and we're going to see what else we can do to this. So I'm going to go to lines real quick, and right now it's just line weight is by block, line type is by block, line color is by block. What that means just by block is it's going to be, it really means by layer is what it really means. But they call it by block. If you click, you can click by layer. So sorry, I'll take that back. Right now, see, and that's the thing that's hard because we say it says by block, right? We made this by block, but when we went and dimensioned something, it already made it on this layer. So it says by block, but it's really just the layer that you're on. Okay, don't get confused with it. It's stupid that they do that. But realistically, anything that you draw is always going to be on the layer that you draw it on. Okay, so there's no reason that would need to be by block. Now you can change it on its own, but there's really no reason to have that called by block. But it should be by layer. But just leave it. It just behaves that way. So, all right, let's take a look at the line type. So maybe we want to change this to hidden line. And maybe we want to make this hidden line a little bit of a line weight to it. So let's change this on the 4-inch to a 50 millimeter. So that's a 0.5 centimeter, right? Sorry, that's a 0.5 millimeters. So that's a lot less than a 0.5 centimeter. That's tiny. But that being said, let's change that and keep it hidden. Click OK. And you guys don't have the hidden option? How do I have this, but you don't? Let's look again. So back to manage dim styles. you've got your in here in the modify, right? And then you don't have it here. Huh. I wonder if I've inherited hidden from an older. Does anyone else have hidden? Okay. Well, then let's just keep it. Let's just keep it this, by block. It's just going to keep it the same. We could change it to continuous and make it really thick. That's an option. But again, you're not going to see that line weight here in model space. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about line weights. Perfect segue to end the day. So what I did here, and you can see that now, one thing that's always going to be true is no matter what style you built it from, maybe you modified it along the way, whatever it says here in the properties is what's going on with what you've got selected. So this 2.11 millimeter line is the size of it. Now I'm not seeing it here, and you won't see it here. You're not going to see line weights in your model space. We should see it here. And I don't even know if we're going to see it here. We might only see it once it's printed, to be honest. See, because that weight looks the same. Let's go ahead and I'm going to change this drastically and see if I can get this to change. I mean, because it shows super huge, right? And that's as big as it can get. But again, when you look at it here, you don't see any thickness to that line. Now, that being said, let's go ahead real quick, and I'm going to zoom there. Cool. And now I'm going to quickly print this. Arc size. I'm going to print this to here, 3436. And now when I print this, and we're going to save this into desktop, Edmonds, spring drop week. The week 6? 5. It's got to be 5. Yeah, we're still in April. Week 5, we're on. So now when this pulls up in Bluebeam, which is a PDF reader, or I guess it's not going to automatically pull up for me. I didn't click that option. Okay. Oh, yeah, it is. It just took a second. There we go. Now we can see that line weight, right? So see how thick that bad boy is, right? But we won't know in AutoCAD until you print it. And I think it is one of the dumbest things. But like in Revit, real quick, I've got this little line up here that when I click that, things show up. So that's what's called the thick line, thin line button. And it allows you to show, this is what it's going to look like printed. This is what the actual line weights of those elements are. So you can get an idea of how thick that is. AutoCAD, you can't see that until you print it, okay? Is it the end of the world? No, but does that line weight really match that other one? Not at all, right? But you wouldn't know that until you print it, right? Until it goes to a PDF or it goes to an actual printer, you can't see that actual line weight change, which I think is dumb. I think you should be able to, but I didn't write the software, right? So unfortunately, it is what it is. I think if nothing else, I should at least be able to see that line weight change in paper space. But unfortunately, I can't. All right. So let's talk about other line weights real quick. We have line weights in not only in your dimensioning, okay, but if we go back to this multi-line text, we go to manage styles, okay. There's also, let's see, they don't have a weight on text, they have a width factor, which kind of acts as the same thing. It just allows you to, how thick is that line? How wide is that line? Okay, so you can do it with the width factor in text. And then in anything else, if we're just talking about actual lines or polylines or anything you want, everything has a line weight to it. Now, a line weight is typically by layer, and the layer is 0, and it just is, it is what the thickness is. And that's just, and I don't even know how to describe what that thickness is, but that's just default. And that's just a thin line thickness. If you want to change that, we can set up your layers for the entire layer to have a different line weight by going to our layer properties. And come on, I'll move you down. Why are you not moving down for me? Thank you. Oh, I guess I've docked it. That's fine too. Okay, but right here, you can change this line type and your line weight. So it just comes in as default. Again, I don't know what default is. It can't be smaller than 0.00 millimeters because that doesn't exist. But I don't know what it is, if it's 0.5, if it's 0.3. I don't know what default is. That being said, though, you can choose thicker and thinner lines and assign them by the entire layer. So let's say this entire layer, I want a 30 millimeter line. Click OK. Well, now that whole layer should be 30 millimeters. I'm going to go ahead and print this once again so we can see the change. And I'll call this week 5 drawing 2. And that was probably about the line weight it was. I think that's a little bit thicker. I don't know. I'm having a hard time telling if that's thicker or thinner. So again, it's pretty, that's probably 0.3 is probably about the line weight then. I mean, that's probably pretty close. I click on, yeah, because everything else is just going to tell me by default or by layer. So, and if I change this, so let's change that whole thing to 1 millimeter thick. Yeah. And now we're starting to see some weight on that line, right? So that's now looking a lot more like that arrowhead line, which this was like 2.11 millimeters. This was as big of a line weight as I could make it in the without typing in my own. I probably could type in 5 millimeters and just make it this big old one, right? So just a difference. That's what line weight does. Again, use line weight the same way we're talking about dimensions and the same way we're talking about text. If it seems too thick, bump it back down. But you need to be able to, in order for you to check that, unfortunately, you need to be able to print that to a PDF before that will occur. Any questions there? All right, so we touched base today on text, sizes, styles, fonts, right? Same thing with dimensions for styles, sizes, fonts, line weights. Okay, so that way when we are ready next week and we're starting to work on stuff, we shouldn't need to go over this anymore, right? We should be able to utilize these styles, utilize these line weights, and in the very next beginning of class, what we're going to do is open our template, the actual template, okay? Add these line weights to that template and save it. So then that way we can pull them up on a next session, okay? And we don't have to build them each time. They'll always be in our template. But we don't have time to do that tonight, and we don't want to save this as our template, right? I guess you could. I mean, we already made them, right? Let's go ahead and do this. Let's save ourselves a step next week. I like this idea. Let's go ahead and before you do anything, so let's go ahead and do this. I want you to save it as, I want to go File, Save As, Drawing Template. And I'm gonna call this construction 241. Spring 2024 V2 for version 2, right? New template. And you'll see in a second. We'll probably override the other template, but I want to save this one first. So we're going to save this as a DWT. And once I save that template, and you guys should already have all those other layers we built on there too, so that'll be part of it. Once I save it as a template, I want to go ahead and go back into model space. Let's see, do I want to do this? I want everyone to take their screenshots. Let's do that right now before we do this, because I'm going to wipe this out and you're going to have a blank spot. So let's take your screenshot of this, just quad 1, quad 2, quad 3, something like that. I know you're following along. Okay. And once you've sent in your screenshot, or you've got it saved at least for submittal, go ahead and take everything, select it all, delete it, and click Control S, which is going to save that template. Oh, we're going to want to do file, save as drawing template. And then we'll save it right there over the top. And now we've got a clean template. So the next time we create a drawing, we will start with all of those text sizes, the dimension sizes, the styles, all of it should be there. The properties, or sorry, the layers that we built last week, they should all be there. Okay. So go ahead and submit your drawing for tonight. And let me make sure that I've got a Dropbox for you on tonight's date. And then our next class, we'll get back into drawing houses, and we'll probably start looking at drawing some elevations next week. And then we're going to be getting into our final project in not too long. So it's already about halfway through. Realistically, we've got 11 weeks. We've been through 5 of them right now. We've got, I would say, 3 more weeks of lecture, of learning things. And then the last 3 weeks is you guys working on your final projects in class, out of class. But I'm pretty much going to be here to give you a small demo on something for, maybe a half hour on those last few classes. And then most of the time is going to be a work period for you to work on your finals, ask questions, get me to help you out, and we'll introduce the final project in a couple weeks. Okay. But now we at least have a new template, and we can start from this next week and proceed forward. All right. Any questions, comments, concerns? Again, I'm going to go ahead and check real quick before I jump off of this, and make sure that you've got a place to put your assignment for the day. Let's get to the right course. All right, and we got 4:30 classwork is on there. And I will post the video as soon as I can. Any questions, comments, concerns before we all sign out for the night? All right, let's see if there's anybody left on the Zoom. Oh, hey, there are people here. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. That concludes tonight's class, and we'll see you next week.
Hey, Graham.
Thanks, Graham.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Graham.
Can you hear me, Graham?
I can.
I came late, so I wrote it in the chat. I don't know if you saw it.
Let me see. Good catch. Let me make sure. Attendance. There you go.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.